Howdy, welcome everybody to Impact TV. I'm Roger Pascal, and welcome to our weekly podcast on all things real estate. We've got some special guests. Have a special guest tonight, but as always, I'm going to open this up with one of my corny jokes that people know me about. So there's two guys that were walking through the woods, and they come up to this big old hole in the ground. They look in there, they can't see the bottom, so they pick up a couple of rocks and they throw in there, and they're listening. They can't hear anything. So they look around, they pick up some bigger rocks and they throw in there and they listen. They can't hear anything. So like, well, I just wonder how deep this hole is. And one guy turns to the other and said, hey, why don't you grab the other end of that railroad tie and we'll throw in this hole and we'll see how deep this thing is. So they grab that railroad tie and they pick it up and they chunk it in that hole and they're listening. And they don't hear anything. And then all of a sudden behind them in the woods, they hear some rustling and they look, and then all of a sudden this goat just runs right past them and jumps right into that hole. And they just look at each other not knowing what to do. And a little bit later, the farmer comes out of the woods and he goes, hey, has anybody seen my goat? And they go, it was the most amazing thing you ever saw in your life. This goat just ran past us and jumped right down in that hole. The farmer says, well, that couldn't have been my goat. My goat was chained to a railroad tie. So there's my corny joke of the day. So thank y'all all for being on here today. We have a full house. We really appreciate all of our participants that are on the chat. If you're on YouTube and you want to put something in the chat, subscribe to the channel and it will open up a chat box. So do that. We want your questions. We want to try to get as many questions. But tonight, we're going to introduce our special guest. But before we do, I'm going to ask Tony Jardu, which is the owner of Impact Waco in Arlington, to come on here and give us a tip of the week. Hello, Tony. How are you?
Roger, I am terrific. Well, I was terrific right before that joke, but thanks. Yeah. As Roger said, my name is Tony Jardu, and my wife Cindy and I are the owners and hosts of Impact Arlington and Impact Waco. And Roger asked me to do a tip this week. And because our theme this week is finding money for your real estate deals, I thought our tip of the week would focus on how to be prepared to ask for the money. So a great first step is to be proactive with any potential lender. And to do that, you need to create or update your credibility packet. And some people use their business plan for that. But don't wait until you have a deal to do this. Do it this week. And the reason is, you're going to find potential lenders even before you have a request for funding. The narrative part of your credibility packet or your business plan only needs to be a couple or so pages long. And the purpose is to inform lenders about who you are and your past, present, and future business activity. See, the truth is most lenders are not interested in reading more than a couple of pages unless you already have a large book of business. And even then, they want the Cliff Notes version of your business. A lender's decision to do business with you will partly be based on an assessment of your credit worthiness, which is heavily influenced by your past and current real estate activity and your financial statements. And that information can be captured in attachments to the credibility packet or your business plan. Now, if your business involves commercial real estate, you could have a more extensive business plan. And here are a number of things that I think you should consider including in the narrative part of your packet or your plan. Your company purpose. A lot of people call that a mission statement. Your business operation. That defines your scope of operations and your strategy. That is, where have you been? Where are you going? Company information. Be brief here. The year you're established, the ownership makeup. Now, you can include a company philosophy, but I would only do this if you have a reason to exist that is other than making money. And core values. I find a lot of great value in including core values. This can shed some light on your character. But don't be generic by simply listing values such as honesty, integrity. Honesty and integrity. Go deeper than that. Put contact information for the principals, the people who are the managing members of your business. Name, phone number, email, and then a very short bio, 1 or 2 sentences about them. Now, when it comes to attachments, bankers love to see tables. Lenders love to see tables because it paints a picture for them about your business. So if you have rentals, put a table in there about your rentals with information about those rentals. If you own notes or you've done owner finance deals, wholesale deals, fix and flips, put tables together for each of those. If you have done fix and flips, you've done some specific deals, you can have one-page summaries. And the beauty about that is you can provide details about each of those projects, including your profits, and then you can cherry pick the best ones and attach them to your credibility packet or your business plan. Include a personal financial statement and sign it, because at some point, when you do business with a lender, they're going to want you to sign that statement. And if you're doing a joint statement with your spouse, both of you need to sign it. Include your company business or your company balance sheet and your profit and loss statement. I don't include tax returns at this point because I don't know if I'm going to do business with this lender. Because at this point of your interaction with them, the credibility packet or the business plan, it's not a request for money. It is setting the table for you to request money. But now that you have that credibility packet or your business plan, go visit with some lenders. That's right. Go in person. Avoid the big banks. They're a total waste of time. Choose local, smaller banks. And don't settle on the first one you visit because you are gathering data on who you might want to do business with. Now, remember this, and this is very important. You're interviewing them. Yeah, they're going to ask you questions, but you're interviewing them. Don't be arrogant about it. Just be very professional. And when you ask the right questions, the more credibility you have will be generated. So don't spend time with a junior loan officer. Ask for a senior loan officer, maybe a vice president and above. Provide a brief introduction about you and your business. Give them your credibility packet or your business plan. Now, if you're new and you're working with me, you're one of my students, in your credibility packet, you can say my partners and I, because I'm your partner. Now, when you want to ask questions, you need to be sure that you're being very specific and start writing down the answers that the lender is providing you. Ask about their loan terms, both for personal loans and loans under your LLC. If you do borrow personally, are they okay if you transfer title to your LLC? That's a really good question. Here's another one. Do they have a minimum loan amount? How about minimum down payment requirements? What is the maximum LTV, the loan to value? How do I get pre-qualified? And what will you need from me? Now, if you've prepared your credibility packet correctly, the only thing they should need will be your tax returns and a loan request. Now, here's some questions that will help you to speak like a lender and build more credibility. What are the seasoning requirements to refinance? That is, how long do I need to be on title before I can refinance my loan? See, now you're talking banker language. Do you portfolio your loans? It's a great question. What does that mean? Portfolio your loans means, do you hold those loans in-house? That is, do you sell them or do you keep them on your own balance sheet? And then this one is an interesting one. Ask if they prepare evaluations instead of requiring appraisals for property values that are $400,000 or less. That's a big difference. That's based on federal regulation. You ask questions like that, you're speaking their lingo, you're speaking their language, you're going to build credibility. Now, when you do have a deal that you want funded, you'll already know which lender has the best terms for you. And Roger, that is my tip of the week.
Very good. That's great. I really appreciate you putting that out there. That's incredible information that we all need to know as we go along building our portfolio. But that is just great. So thank you so much, Tony, for bringing that up today and presenting that. Great as always. So thank you so much for making that happen. So CJ, if we can get Dennis on the screen with Pete, I would like you to have Dennis introduce Dennis. If you can introduce Pete, and you can go ahead and CJ take me off the screen and just put Pete on there. And
okay, well, thank you, Roger. Thank you, Tony. What a great tip. It's my honor tonight to introduce someone that I absolutely admire. This, I've had real estate investing groups for a long time. I figured it out. I think I probably had 300 speakers over 15 years, 300 speakers. And this man was absolutely head and shoulders above all the rest of them. If you get a chance to hear this guy, you really need to take advantage of it. He's the Roney Award winner. I believe it was for 2017. Is that right, Pete? 2017 Roney Award. Okay, I'm not sure his microphone's on. So that's the Jim Rohn Award for excellence in teaching. So what a wonderful opportunity to have someone of this magnitude. Pete is funny, he's knowledgeable, and he's very interesting. Now, I've been investing for almost 50 years. He's been doing it a little bit longer than I have, and he's done it a lot better. I took 18 pages of notes the last time he spoke. 18 pages, and I've been doing it for 50 years already, so you can get an idea of what you can learn. So again, it's my honor. Welcome, Pete. I'm so happy that you're going to be with us tonight, and you're going to be with us on the 12th of March. And Roger, that's my introduction. No voice.
Yeah, there we go. I'm sorry. I was telling. So thank you so much, Dennis. That's a great introduction, Pete. I'm so excited that you're on the call tonight. So Pete, if you can unmute yourself, and then CJ, if we can just throw everybody up on the screen, and we're going to open this up with Pete. Before the call, Pete was telling us some incredible stories and great life experiences that he's had with real estate investing. So Pete, I'm going to throw it to you, or we'll throw it out there. First of all, Karen, do you have any questions that anybody has on here, or do we want to just start with Pete? Get Pete to tell us some stories about what he's done.
I have some questions that are general questions that we can get to after Pete gets his microphone unmuted.
Okay, good deal. Okay, Pete, I think you're still muted there, it looks like. Can you unmute yourself? Or CJ, can you unmute him for him?
Pete, can you hear us?
Okay, we had him on a while ago, so we'll okay, whoop, we just lost Pete. So he'll be back on in just a second. So, live podcast. This is what we get. This is what we get. Tony, Pete was telling us some stories a while ago that were just absolutely phenomenal. He was telling us that, and he may go through and tell us again as he comes back on, but Pete was telling us that every morning he goes to eat at McDonald's, and he said he just can't wrap his mind around people saying they can't find deals, because he's listening to various conversation and picking up on keywords as he's in that McDonald's, and somebody talks about real estate, or they talk about wanting to sell their house or wanting to do something. He says he just gets up and goes over and sits down at their table. So
I would
how
never
cool
leave
is that?
McDonald's.
What's that?
I would never leave McDonald's. That's such a simple concept. So.
That's right. It is. It is. So, and he said that he has 4 families that he's done. I believe he said over 500 deals with those 4 families. So that is absolutely incredible. I've had some that I've done that too. So, or not that many, but I've done 2 or 3 transactions with one seller, or where they've had multiple houses, areas like that. So, Pete, we still got you on mute. Let's see if we can get that fixed for you. So there we go. Almost there. Okay, good deal. Good deal. So, all right. We lost him again. Okay, more improv stuff. So, Dennis, do you want to tell anything? Some of your stories you've got.
Well, Roger,
get the notes.
Roger, I think we had some questions from Karen. You had some questions teed up already.
Okay, Karen.
Okay, let's see. We had the first one was, well, they're for Pete. How to think outside the box to maximize our profits.
Well, those weren't the ones. I was thinking about the ones that we had shared some emails with. You said you've been asked some questions earlier in the week by some folks.
Yeah, we could do those if that's. Is that
Can we get Pete going? Why don't you ask some of those questions, because they deal with finding money.
Okay, great. So that's a great idea. And the first one was, what's the easiest money for a newbie to get?
The easiest money, in my opinion, and this may be a more generic than people want to hear, is get them to get a seller to owner finance you. Yeah, that's the easiest money, and we have a money ladder that we present at our opening slides in our live meetings. That everybody that comes to a live meeting needs to see that opening slide. And it starts out at the toughest way, or the toughest way to invest, is your own money, because you're very, very limited on that, and it goes all the way up the ladder about 9 or 10 or 12 steps there. Dennis might be able to come in there, but the best way is
12. Yeah. The top 2 is money from the owner. That's number 1, and the money from investors would be the other, where you don't have to have any money if you have a list of investors who are ready to purchase the property. All you need to do is tie the property up and then contact your investors. So you haven't invested anything, but you made money. I think they're trying to make that a little bit more difficult in some states, but right now in our state, it's really easy to do that.
I agree. Gotcha. Okay. And the next question, hopefully we can get through a few of these, and maybe Pete will be able to join us soon. What's the least expensive long-term loan to get? So for like someone that's going to buy and hold, and they're refinancing it, now they want to hold it long-term because it's all ready to go, it has a tenant in it, making money. What's the best option there?
Who are you asking?
Whoever wants to answer me.
Okay.
Looks like Tony's coming on.
Okay.
Tony?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So long-term financing for a buy and hold, typically you can go conventional conforming or an FHA loan, least expensive, because especially if you have a good relationship with a long-term lender, is you're not going to pay as much in fees as you would with some other lenders. You are looking at a standard mortgage using perhaps Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac guidelines. So there will be some criteria that they're going to govern your lending request by. The down payments can be as low as 3%, depending upon your credit score. There are down payment assistance programs that are available with some lenders as well. And now when you do have a loan that's a loan to value of 80% or more, then, and that's with a smaller down payment, then you will have private mortgage insurance involved. So there's a cost there. The loan limits are higher than FHA. Credit scores can be 620 or more, and you get better rates if you have a better credit score above 700. Fees are going to be determined by the individual lender. FHA loans, if you can do those, 3.5% interest. If you have a 580 or better credit score, that's a pretty cool product. If you're down 3.5%, I'm sorry, I'm not sure, but 3.5% down payment, down payments of 10% or more, if you put more than 10% down, you can go all the way down to 500 to 579 credit score. There's some other lending criteria with the FHA, but it's sitting out there to help people get home ownership. Again, there'll be, and I think at the FHA, they call it an MIP, mortgage insurance that you pay. And of course, there'll be fees associated with that. So I think conventional lenders is the way to go for long-term purposes.
Awesome. Awesome.
Pete's back.
Pete's back. There he is. There you are, Pete.
That was not fun. Okay.
We waited on you.
That's right. So, Pete, can you were telling us a while ago before the call that you've got how many deals with 4 different families or 4 different people?
I had done 71 transactions with 4 families when I did that presentation for Gary Johnston a couple of years ago, but I've done several more deals with a couple of those families in the last 4 years. But I mean, that's very common. I mean, that's what you do. You don't do a deal and then abandon all of the allies you made and all the people who you helped. I have a friend who in 2008 made a loan to somebody who was rehabbing a house. So you can see, if you think back, that was just superb timing. He and his next door neighbor lent $100,000, which they pooled $50,000 each, and lent it to a rehabber who finished the house in about a year and a half, so had it ready for market in the middle of 2009. At that point, the market had more than betrayed both the lender and the remodeler. John and his neighbor were not able to get paid back because the rehabber was unable to sell the house. And it was a 1,700 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. And they had to go to foreclosure on the property. They did foreclose and they won the property. So they ended up owning a property, at which point his neighbor died, which had nothing to do with the property, by the way. And when she died, he then had as his partner in that loan the nephew who lived in Washington State. The house is here in Pinellas County. The nephew, of course, said, I want the $50,000 that I inherit. And so John said, well, there isn't $50,000. Your aunt and I made this loan 2 years ago. And it's no longer a loan. And we no longer have money. And you hear that nonsense about we're deeding the property back. This was not a deed back. We wanted our money back and we didn't get it. And the nephew called him every day for months and sometimes twice a day. And I was talking to John one day and he said, if I could just borrow $50,000 against this house, I'd pay that kid off so I never had to listen to him again. Now, can you imagine that situation? See, everyone I know who's been involved in real estate has seen something like that. And so I said to John, I said, gee, John, I don't know anyone who'd lend you $50,000 on a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,700 square foot house with a 1-car garage. But I do know someone who'd lend you $50,000 on a 1-bedroom, 1-bath condo. And he said, but I don't have a 1-bedroom, 1-bath condo. And I said, but you could. And I traded him a 1-bedroom, 1-bath condo I had for the 1,700 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. That was 2010, maybe very early 2011. I got one of my friend's IRAs to lend him $50,000 on the 1-bedroom, 1-bath condo, which enabled him to shut the nephew up who lived out in Washington State. So now I've taken a condo that I hated owning because it had an association and I don't do well with associations. and converted it by 1031 into a very nice 1,700 square foot 3-2. Unfortunately, it's 18 miles north of me, and that's too far away from me. So I had the house, and then I talked to a friend of mine who had $93,000 sitting with an accommodator for a 1031 exchange, and he has yet to find his target property. And so I sold him the 1,700 square foot house for $93,000 cash, thereby enabling him not to pay taxes on his $93,000, which was sitting with the accommodator.
That's amazing.
Now, 2 years later, the owner of the 3-bedroom, 2-bath house called me. He said, we're getting older. We decided, we paid $93,000 for this house. The tenant has offered us $100,000 cash, not much. We think we're just going to cash it out and have fewer rental properties. Now, what do we know about him? He paid $93,000, but it was a 1031. So the $93,000 came from an exchange. So his basis was the basis he brought forward from the property he'd given up. And so I reminded him that he wasn't going to have next to no capital gain, and suggested he call his CPA. And it turned out his basis was less than $15,000. So he had an $85,000 taxable event, and the government was going to steal $15,000 of his money. And so I bought the property back from him with an installment sale. So the installment sale enabled him to collect interest on what would have been stolen by the government. And so he could keep that capital returning interest to him. And so I bought the property back with an installment note. But I didn't want the property because, you remember, I told you it was too far north. So now that I bought it for $100,000, I sold it for $100,000 and gave him a mortgage on a different piece of property. So I took the cash, but because I paid $100 and sold it for $100, I had no taxable event, and I raised the cash. The young man who bought the property got a VA loan to buy it. That's how he cashed us out. 3 years later, that young man lost his job. Now it's 2016. And he called up and he said, I can't afford this house. I want to return to where my family lives up in Pennsylvania, but I'm 2 months in arrears. I don't want to ruin my credit. And so I bought the house from him subject to the mortgage and got it back again. And so I paid $6,000, which brought him current, and paid for a moving van so he could go back home. So now I've got $6,000 in this place. And so then I went to the Monday night meeting and sat down with a young man who was a starter who only had a couple of rental properties. And I sold it to him for $11,000 cash and wrapped the mortgage so I could protect the young man who'd moved to Pennsylvania. And so he pays me, I pay the mortgage. And the young guy in Pennsylvania has got perfect credit since that time. The house has done well. And as well as getting $11,000 back, which got me my $6,000 that I'd invested back and put me ahead $5,000, I have an option to pay the young man who bought it $5,500 for half of the equity in the house. Now, all of a sudden, we find ourselves in 2022. What's happened to that house?
Appreciated.
Does anybody remember a $100,000 house from 2016? Is it the same
Vaguely,
value
yes.
today?
Yeah, it was like
well,
last week, wasn't it?
just appraised for $285,000.
Wow.
The young man, the starter, is refinancing the house. I am taking my option off the house to clear the title so that he can refinance it. And with the refinance proceeds, he's getting something like 4%, 30 years. He's going to pay off another rental house. So he'll have a free and clear rental house. And I'm going to have an option on 2 houses. Well, that was one deal, one house. When I go to Gulfside Title to have Sue Ann Lewis do the title, she's real good. She can handle that title pretty easily because she did that title in 2008. She did that title in 2010. She did it in 2013. She did it in 2016. The reissue rates, even on the title insurance, are too expensive because she's done it so many times. But to do business that way gives you so much more opportunity, and you're dealing with all people who you like and you enjoy and you trust and you want to help and you want to see do well. So that's a story of one house over the last 12 years.
I was counting the different strategies that were used in that one property during that one time, and I stopped at 7.
Well, but see, there are no strategies. There's
Oh,
a
man.
problem. There's
Uh-huh.
a problem somebody has, and whatever it takes to solve it, you solve it.
Incredible.
In 1999, we bought a house for $400 down, subject to a fleet 10% mortgage. Anybody remember fleet? No? Boy, you guys are young.
Yes.
All right, well, fleet was an institutional lender. Institutions mean danger, so you want to avoid institutions as best you can. So in 1995, we bought the property subject to a fleet $40,000 mortgage at 10% that cost $450 a month. The house was a break-even house. We paid $453 to close that deal. That tenant was a good tenant. That institutional lender did not cause us a problem, though we've had many who have with subject to. And so we still want to get rid of that. So in 1998, the Roth IRAs were beginning. We borrowed $35,000 because the 40 had paid down over 5 years by $5,000. We borrowed $35,000 at 8%, down from 10, and the payment we remained $450 a month. So now we're amortizing faster, but we borrowed from a friend's Roth IRA. So not only have we increased the spread because of our rate, but we've increased the safety because we have a friend as the mortgagee. Then in 2003, I was talking to a woman who was 50 years old. I apologize, was 52 years old and had a Roth IRA. So we borrowed $25,000 because it had paid down now to 25 at 8% with no payments for 7.5 years. Because until she was 59.5, she couldn't take money out of her IRA. So she wanted the money inside the IRA accruing and compounding. Well, with no payments, that house had a much better cash flow for us. And so over the next 7 years, it grew back up to $40,000 again. Then when she was 59.5, we began paying her IRA $400 or $50 less than we were paying when we began the deal, but still $400 more than we were paying the year before. And we paid that every month until 2013. In 2013, we're paying her $400 a month so she can go spend it because she's over 59.5 and she can withdraw it. And she said, I've got an extra $44,000 in the IRA. I said, what do you mean? So I thought you were going to be taking the money out and spending it. She said, well, I didn't need it, so it's just accruing in there. I want you to borrow it. And so we borrowed the extra money and ran the balance up from $40,000 to $64,000. We took that money and bought 3 more houses. Our payment increased to $500 a month. In 2019, she called, said, I've got an extra $33,000. I want you to borrow it. So we borrowed another $33,000, bringing the mortgage balance to $95,000. Now, in December of 2021, my tenant that I mentioned to you guys earlier, who had $180,000 in the bank, paying her 0.1%, lent us $150,000 that we used to pay off the $95,000 that was owed to Beth's IRA. And we now have $150,000 on that house that we bought in '95 for $40,000. But that $150,000 didn't just go to buy toys and trips. That bought us 3 more houses, put 3 new roofs on another one of our houses, new windows, a new kitchen, and we just bought another house. So even though we got a negative cash flow in that house, if you look at all the houses it control, well, that's what real estate and real estate investing is about. It's about purposefully building and managing a portfolio.
All excellent information. Excellent. I'm hearing some great things over in the comment section. You mind if I share?
Go ahead.
Go for it.
All right. So let's see. We have John Herrick says, welcome, Pete. John Herrick, old student from Jack Miller days. Pay attention, everyone. This guy knows his stuff and is a great teacher. John Herrick would like to know, Pete, what does your t-shirt say?
Legalize freedom.
Legalize freedom. There you go, John. Sorry we didn't get to that question. Everyone's saying hello. There's a few questions for Pam. And then, where did it go? Sam Perry says that he just wanted to say that he went to see Dennis a few weeks ago about an issue he was having with some financing options. 2 weeks later, and Dennis had completely solved his problem. Dennis is a wealth of information and can solve any problem you may have concerning real estate. So just wanted to catch everybody up on that.
Thank you, John.
And, Matt was wanting to know how he could use his Roth to fund and fix a property. And everybody else is just saying hello. So, Pete, you have the floor again.
Okay, well, Matthew can just use his Roth IRA to fix and flip properties if he's willing to take on that liability, and if he doesn't mind paying the UBIT tax inside of his Roth IRA. I mean, it would not be something I would do, but a lot of people like to do it. It's very easy to structure around that and use your knowledge and your contacts to fix and flip to benefit your IRA.
Hey, Pete, before the call we were on and we were just kind of discussing some things. And you mentioned that you have you frequent McDonald's for breakfast.
Since 1986, the same McDonald's every morning.
Well, and something you said there is you just can't imagine why people are wanting to buy a list, because you get all the referrals that you could possibly want or whatever. So kind of go into that. How does that work when you're at McDonald's? You hear something. What do you do? How do you go approach
if
that?
If I'm anywhere, but for example, I was sitting in McDonald's the other day, and a guy who's a real estate manager, who I know is a good manager, who I like, said, I just am listing a property. The owner was trying to sell it. It didn't sell. So she's going to Europe. She doesn't want to have to worry about it. She's listing it with me to manage. So now that's the information I have. I do know my neighborhood. So I know this isn't a great neighborhood. I buy neighborhood. If I could give one piece of advice, it would be to always be upgrading the quality of the properties you have and the neighborhoods in which they rest, because that will make it easier for you and you're much less apt to burn out and get discouraged. So in this case, this is in a great neighborhood. So now I know a property manager is being hired to manage a property that the person tried to sell and didn't sell, and they're going out of the country. So now, is that enough information to write an offer? It is. I offered $20,000 a year upfront, annual rent, on a 10-year lease with an option to buy the property for $500,000. Now, was it subject to inspection? Of course it was. Was she going to decide what to do? Yes. Might we have had to meet to put it together? Yes. But when you hear it, make an offer. This morning, I sat down with a young man who is buying or is attempting to buy a house from a couple who are separated and soon to be divorced. The wife wants off the mortgage because her credit is involved in that mortgage. The husband wants to wait for profit. The young man who met me at McDonald's said there is equity there. So we're having the young man and the husband buy the property from the husband and wife, thereby taking the wife off the mortgage, placing the young man on the mortgage, and then the young man and his new partner, the ex-husband of the other seller, will retail the property and make a profit. Well, if he hadn't have been at McDonald's this morning to ask about it, he would have been discouraged, because with a divorce and nobody wanted to help one another and one wanting to maximize profit and the other one wanted to just walk, that swamps a lot of people. But it's our job to help others, and it's our job to ask for help.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. It's as Dennis always tells us, preaches to us, or whatever, our job is we're problem solvers. That's what we do. So we solve problems, and you're obviously very good at picking out problems when you're in an area. So that's great. And Dennis.
Pete, my favorite story is the person who didn't want their children to get the money. They wanted the grandbaby to get the money. They had some kind. Do you remember that story?
Well, I mean, I see that often, but I always remember Jack Miller back in the 70s bought a house in Tampa, and he talking to the guy about doing the owner financing, and the man said, I will carry the mortgage with a prohibition against prepayment for 40 years. I want interest only for 40 years and a prepayment penalty as large as is legally possible, because I believe in 40 years, my children will be in their 60s and they might be mature enough to handle the money. And you never know what you walk into. My dad sold a couple a house, and what it was is he saw a young couple going to have their first baby, and he sold them a house. They had not owned a house before, and he sold them a house near their parents, knowing that being near babysitters and having a child and having a yard for the child would be a good thing. And just that thoughtful consideration of the people and then helping them get something they need is an important skill. Well, just less than 2 years later, that same young couple came back to see my dad to list that house for sale. And I'm looking at them and saying, gee, you just bought it. And I remember my dad explaining why it was good for you to buy. why would you sell a nice house like that? And they said, well, you remember that baby we were going to have when your dad sold us the house? That baby was twins. And last month, we had a third baby, which was also twins. And the 2-bedroom, 1-bath house it's still a nice house, but it doesn't fit them. And see, that always across the board, if I'm talking to someone who's talking about selling a house, my first question to them is, why would you sell a nice house like this? Because something's going on in their life, and my job is to help.
Hey, Pete, this is Pam Cleary, one of the master trainers. I have a quick question for you, if you don't mind. So I have students that are coming across people that want to do, they say they want to do owner financing. When
everybody in America today.
So, and I'm trying to get over to them, and I just want to know if this is right or wrong here. I'm like, why are you going out and asking them about interest rate? Did they ask about interest rate? I mean,
no, rarely do they ask about interest rate.
So I'm like, don't you just need to know? Most of the time, they're just wanting a certain payment every month, correct?
No.
Okay.
No. Most of the time in my area, where I'm dealing with older folks, they're interested in money lasting longer than they last.
Okay. So one of my students has a deal going on. It's it involves land and mobile homes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And currently the mobile homes are getting around $2,000. There's 4 of them. So it's like at $500, a lot here. So I broke it down, telling them that you have to figure, the expenses and all this, because I'm like, she's not making a whole $200 or $2,000 a month. She's making less than that, what it is. So here's my question. She's not coming out with numbers. She's just saying, hey, I will owner finance this. How would you approach that, trying to give that person a number?
I'd say, why would you owner finance this? You need to find out no one in America, except a few Democrats, want dollars. Because dollars are the stupidest thing in the world you could take. It's like taking a giant piece of ice and carrying it around with you, watching it melt and become less valuable every second. And so you got my tenant who just had $180,000 in the bank at 0.1%. I just talked to a lady who's my neighbor. She sold her house in Kentucky and moved to Florida. And of course, she sold it through a realtor. So she sold it for cash because the realtors don't know anything about business or life. And she's got $100,000 cash that Wells Fargo is giving her $8.33 a month. Is there anybody in this room or in this listening group who would have paid more than $8.33 a month for that house? See, the entire world. And there's no one who says, gee, isn't this wonderful? I can have $8 on my $100,000. I borrowed her money at 4% interest only for 10 years, but she went out of the house, sold the house, got the cash, moved, put it in the bank, and realized she was starving to death. And then she was referred to me, and I borrowed her money at 40 times what she was getting in the bank. Even though in my heart, I knew I should have offered her 2 times. I offered her 40 times what she was getting in the bank. And that's across the board what you can do today.
Okay.
But back to your point about if it was just land, then it's possible that a lot of the $2,000 would have come to them. If it's land and house, I typically take the gross rent and cut it in half to determine what's a payment I can afford in my market. Because taxes, insurance, maintenance, supplies, advertising, all of those things that are on a Schedule E are going to eat up, in my market, more than 40% of the gross rents. And you're absolutely right that they shouldn't be looking at gross rents as though it was income.
Right. Okay.
Pete, I've got a next door neighbor who is trying to sell his house. It's been a rental. I mean, he's right next door to me and I want to buy it, but he's dragging his feet. And I'm not sure how to approach him except to say, here's my offer.
No, you say, why would you sell a nice house like this? And then you be quiet and listen to him. What is happening?
His new wife wants to get rid of the house, wants nothing to do
Okay.
with it.
Okay, so his wife wants to get rid of the house. So
Right.
if you showed up, you're Santa Claus, and you show up with a bag full of something for them, what would that something be that would please him and his new wife? It's not money. If it's just how much, what are they asking for the house?
He thinks that the value listed on Zillow is what he wants to ask for it.
Yeah, Zillow's done a fantastic job. They just bought 7,000 houses for $70,000 on an average above what they can resell it for. That's just the guy I'd go to for value. But Americans look at the computer, so that's what you get.
Yeah.
So all right, so Zillow. So now, how much money? What is that number? You know?
410.
All right, $400,000. If you showed up and you gave him 400 Federal Reserve notes, just stacked them there in his living room, and you came back in a year, would they still be there?
No.
No. Why? He said that's all he wanted. He just wanted money.
Right.
Well, how come he doesn't still have it a year from now? Because he lied. He lied to you and he lied to himself. He wants to pay medical bills. He wants to buy another house. He wants a new car. He wants to travel. No one wants dollars. The dollars are just a conduit. And your job is to find out what he's going to do. All the time I bump into people who say, I want to sell this house. And I say, why? And they say, I want to buy another house closer to home. I can't do stairs anymore. I want a one-story. In that case, if they're wage slaves, they can go get 30-year financing, and you can make their mortgage payments for them, but you can't give them $400,000 cash.
Right. Okay.
See, so if you got him enough money to make a down payment, and they went and bought another house for $400,000 cash, but it was $40,000 down, and they got 3.5% 30-year mortgage, you could make those payments for them, and now you got great financing for an investor by matching the mortgage payments that an owner-occupant can get.
Okay. Okay. So I have some more conversation to do with him.
Well, yes, you do. And we have Pete here in a couple of weeks, so we'll be glad to keep picking his brain on things like that. Okay, I do have a question in the chat from John Herrick. He says, this is for Pete, and then it's a follow-up question to Dennis. So, Pete, John would like to know, what are the income price ratios in Tampa St. Pete these days at fair market value? Not necessarily what you pay, but still sensible. Not Looney Tunes like California.
I don't understand the question.
I think he's wanting to know the income what's the income versus the you don't have a clue. You just hang out at McDonald's.
If I buy a house
Uh-huh.
and I offer no money down and no payments, I can probably afford that house. So that's the offer you write. It has to do with what I or the person you're working with, not what the marketplace is. I don't know anything about what the marketplace is.
I'm thinking maybe he might be talking about rentals. John, you may have to clarify that question. Dennis, any feedback on that one?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Well, in our market, my son and I, Michael and I were just talking about that. If you are in the $1,200 to $1,500 a month range, you have to buy because there's nothing you can rent. You still have a chance to buy a house and have a payment. Hey, Elise, welcome back. You want to sit there? No, she's not going to join me. All right. No, you still have a chance to buy a house with a $1,500 or $1,400 payment and be an owner. But it's almost impossible now to rent even a decent place. The rents have gone crazy high. But we've got so much inflation of the money supply, just pure supply and demand, the extra supply of dollars, that prices have gone nuts. The rents just take your breath away here. And I'm so old that it's very hard for me to adjust.
What about you, Dennis? What do you see in the Dallas-Fort Worth area as far as rental, your income versus how much you pay for it? Are you seeing the rents go up?
Well, yeah, rents are going up because people are moving to Texas in tremendous numbers. They're moving from the blue states. And so there's not a lot of available rentals. So, of course, the rents are going up. And so is the price of the homes. I mean, the after repair value. And I expect that to continue for a while. But Roger would be a better person to answer that question than me.
Okay, Roger, what do you have to say? And we may be closing this out pretty quick in the next 7 minutes. So go there.
It really doesn't have anything to do with creative financing or creative deals. I'm sorry, not financing creative deals. But what I understand is you're saying what is the income to rent ratio is 30% is the way I do it. You know, I don't want them to pay, I guess that's what he's asking. I don't know what you're really getting to, Karen, but what John's getting to on that. But I don't think.
Well, Pete's correct. It really doesn't matter. What matters is, what's their problem and what are we willing to offer? That's really,
But if you're trying to rent a house, however, I like to see the rent be at least no more than 1/3 of their take-home income. However, I'm looking much more at what skills they have, because I'm increasingly wary of dollars. And so my tenants, since America ended freedom in 2020, my tenant selection has been people who are not forced to go to work in an office and have skills that they can do typically with computers and work out of the home. And so I'm not as worried about them losing their jobs. I like people who have skills. They are good handymen, contractors, electricians, plumbers, because they can pay me with services that I can use. I rented to a young man who's a great he can do everything and does it well. I rented him a house that he couldn't afford by agreeing to buy 1 day of his services every month to give him the additional dollars so he could afford it. Now I've got a person in my house who I value and who I like his values, and he has skills he can pay me with, if not dollars. And I don't want the dollars as much as I want my house fixed.
That's a great idea. Yes.
All right. Well, Pete, we've got like 2 minutes left on this call, and we always try to keep it to 1 hour. The stories that you've given today have been phenomenal. Do we have anybody else out there that has a question regarding creative deal making?
Lots of see you in a couple weeks. So while we wait for any more questions to come up in the chat, can we go over again the list of where all Pete's going to be?
Yeah, absolutely. On March the 8th, Pete is going to be in Wichita Falls. On March the 9th, he's going to be in Longview. March the 10th, we're going to be in Waco. And March the 11th, we're going to be in Fort Worth. These are an hour to hour and a half essentially clips of what Pete's going to be talking about on Saturday the 12th. So we have our big event. It's an all-day event on Saturday the 12th. It is going to be absolutely phenomenal because you've just gotten a taste tonight of some of the stories and some of the deal making that Pete has done and what he's going to be bringing to the table on that on Saturday the 12th. If you're interested on that, you can go to realimpactevents.com and you can register. So look for that. You want to associate with the group that you're associated with. So if you're in the Longview area, or the Wichita Falls area, or the Alliance area, whatever, you want to click on that as who you're affiliated with. But we would love to have anybody, and we hope to sell it out. Yes, sir, Dennis.
If they have any problems or any question about that, you can call my number, 817-371-8658, or any question on real estate.
There you go.
And I'll
There
drop
you go.
realimpactevents.com in the chat for everybody. So
Okay.
I think it was on the right screen.
All right. Tal, do you have a question real quick?
I guess we run out of time, but I just want to say thank you, Pete, for all your sharing today. I learned so much. I love structuring deals. So
In this one little hour. Look at
yes,
what I learned.
yes, I love it so much. So I guess, well, I just have a quick question. Would you give us like maybe a 1 or 2 goal every time you structure the deal? Your goal would be like the list capital you put in the deal, or to solve the problem? What is your goal every time you think to how you're going to structure the deal?
The most important thing of every deal is the ally you make. The ally is more valuable than any property or any profit, because that ally will refer people to you and bring you deal after deal after deal.
Okay, awesome.
All right. And Renee, you had a question? You're on mute. Renee, you're on mute.
I know. I was trying to find.
It's going to take too long.
My question is a long question. And I'm going to ask it at the Longview meeting. So all of you can come to Longview on March the 9th, Wednesday night, and you'll get to hear my question.
All right.
All right. Good deal. So all these meetings on the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th, you want to be there at 6:30, I think. If that's wrong with anybody, just come out, raise your hand, and say, nope, we're starting earlier, we're starting later, or 6:30 is good. So you're gonna be there at 6:30. And yes, sir, Dennis.
The 11th, where's that meeting? On the 11th?
11th is Arlington. Did I not say that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you said Fort Worth. Thanks.
Oh, did I? Okay, Arlington. So it's going to be right there, Impact Arlington, right there off of 30 and East Chase Parkway.
Great.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Very quickly. So if we have a deal come up that we need help structuring, can we call Pete before the meeting?
Of course.
Okay.
Right. Good deal. All right. So, okay. Anybody else on anything? Pete, you want to close this out with anything?
No, just thank you very much. And please, if anybody's coming, I don't want to listen to me droning on all night. Ask some questions. Say, the hell you say. Participate when you come. Thank you very, very much.
Good deal. All right. Well, thank you all for being on here. Thank you for putting up with my corny joke earlier tonight. And then we will see everybody next Sunday night. And don't forget, March the 8th in Wichita Falls, March the 9th, Longview, Texas, March the 10th, Waco, Texas, March the 11th, Arlington, Texas, and March the 12th, Arlington, Texas, right there by the Ranger Ballpark and the Cowboy Stadium at the Sheraton Hotel there. It's going to be an all-day event on March the 12th. We look forward to seeing you there. You need to get there. Go to realimpactevents.com to register. And we look forward to Pete's going to be on here next Sunday night. So we look forward to having him again. So bring your questions and on creative deal making. Good deal.
Well, you're a good negotiator. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right.